Yeah, so we are live. So, hi everyone from wherever you are joining. Welcome to this session, which is around governance, and we would be touching on varied kind of topics. So, whether it is related to corporate governance or in public life, various, let's say, bureaucratic interventions are there. Even on the policy front, will be subsequent sessions we will be discussing. Today we have Dr. Palakh Jain, who I had the pleasure of knowing from Ahmedabad days, but she was into the research stream of it. I was in the normal MBA program. And I would say that she is very driven, not just from, let's say, after her PhD from IMA, but even prior to that, she was very intimately involved with the education sector and along with her regular role at Bennett University, where she is associated with the economics area at the university. She is also involved with intervention in school-going children within the NCR region. Apart from that, of course, she has also taken up opportunity, and I would say that is really refreshing for even from organization perspective. She has taken up independent director position at two institutions. One is Nupur Recyclers, and the second one is Women Card. And of course, academia's intervention is required because institutions, the boards, going forward, they are quite intimately involved in the day-to-day activities and don't get the so-called fresh perspective and kind of insights from the academia. So thank you, Palak, for being with us here. It's really great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you, Siddharth, for the opportunity and the nice introduction. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So first and foremost, as I mentioned in the beginning itself, that it is not that I'm a PhD led you to choose education and an area of interest. You were much before joining IMA, you were teaching, you were involved in the academic area. What led you to have such interest in the academic domain?
Yeah, so I finished my master's from Delhi School of Economics in 2005. And in 2004, I went to Bangalore at TVS Motors to do my internship. I think internally I was mature enough to realize who am I, a question that is posed by all the philosophies across the world. And I realized TVS Motor was offering a wonderful work life balance, but I needed a grade more than that in terms of my work life balance. So I decided instead of sitting for the placements at Delhi School of Economics to work at Delhi University, and I worked at Hansraj College and Venkateshwara College for around 2 years. I still remember in the first class of Professor Sunil Maheshwari at IMA, he asked, "What is your goal?" And I was the only one in the class who exactly knew why I was sitting here, that I have to earn my PhD and go back to academics. So after that, I kept jumping jobs from British High Commission, Niti Aayog, various think tanks, consultancy, but at the end I realized once you are a teacher, you are always a teacher, because that is something that really gives you a deep sense of satisfaction no matter what you are doing. And you must have seen many economists and others, they go and work in best of the organizations like UN and all, but they eventually come back to academics. So I think I keep shifting jobs from consultancy and international institutions, but eventually, after a few years, I take up an academic role. So I think it's internally driven because it just helps me survive as a better person in the society, you can say.
Okay, great, great. So, in case in India, as far as India is concerned, and even you rightly said, even if let's say an individual has been into the industry, taken up some leadership position at maybe organizations like RBI, as Mr. Raghuram Rajan would have been, they return back to academics. So, what keeps them motivated, and what keeps you motivated even now?
Yeah, I think first is definitely the fact that you are giving back to the society. You are sharing your entire body of knowledge that you have accumulated from your corporate experience or consultancy, you are able to deliver that body of knowledge to a set of students who are ready to absorb it. And I think, at least for me as a teacher, that has been the biggest driving force, because when you are able to give back, you really earn and learn in the process. So I would say that is just one factor. And other than that, you will see that, in a BBA class or a MBA class, I'm not talking about PhD classes, the age of the class is constant every year. Though I am aging, but I interact with the bunch of students who are constant in age. So that really keeps you alive and young, because they always have a different perspective. They come up with young ideas. So I will always have an older way of, or a traditional way of looking at a problem. But I'm surprised my students are way ahead in terms of using technology, even chat GPT for that matter. So it's a give and take relation, because I also learn in the process from the young minds and their energy.
Okay, so wonderful. Uh, so thank you for sharing all that insights and what lets you keeps you motivated. Apart from being in as a typical faculty in a academic setup, you also took initiative and became part of two organization as an independent director. I think they also a couple of months ago or so, or I think a year ago or so, they went into IPO. So,
Yes.
how did you narrow down to this opportunity and what led you to get these opportunities? If you could just throw some light on that.
Yeah, so I have been teaching at various institutes before Bennett, like FMS, MDI, and all. And I was teaching even the executive development program there. I was teaching officers. And as a management teacher, you would know we teach Harvard Business case studies in every class. So I realized that what I was able to deliver in, say, 40 minutes in a classroom setup 10 years back, now I'm able to deliver that in 20 minutes. So I think it's about knowing yourself and knowing the need of your brain. So I realized over the years, after teaching so many case studies and interacting with so many management professionals, even with experience, the capacity of the brain increases, that you are able to process a lot of information in a shorter time frame. So I was looking for an opportunity where I could get some, you can say, stimulation for my brain. And I thought, why not the ID position? Because, as you know, in the board meeting, there is tons of information that is laid in front of you, and you have to make faster decisions. So it was more about who I was and what kind of an opportunity or I was looking for, and what was the need of my brain to uh, keep stimulated. So that was my motivation. People have different motivations, like they want to be on a board for a power position or other things. But for me, it was more like learning and giving back in terms of processing information at a quicker pace.
Okay, okay. So usually people when they're taken on a board position, even let's say an ID position, usually the older set of I would say candidates are quite a bit preferred. So given you are quite young, what were maybe let's say the attributes from your experiences or with people which led you to get to these opportunities. So if you could just throw some light on that, in case let's
Yeah,
say people are, yeah.
you are absolutely right. I'm one of the youngest IDs in India, and I became ID maybe 2 years back, when I was like 2 years younger. So people were not so open about taking an ID. First of all, you are a female and you have no experience from the corporate world. You are from academia. But what held me was because I come from a business family. So I think my business acumen that I have accumulated from childhood still now from my father, I think that helped me strike my first position. And there was this person named Miss Swanubhuti Jain, who's an
Okay.
ID on Motilal Oswal board. So she helped me guide. And there's this another organization, Mentor My Board, which really helped me, charter my journey as ID, because I was clueless about how to proceed. Because people just don't want to share how you can become an ID, because it's like a threat, because there are so limited positions. So I think Swanubhuti and Mentor My Bros, Divya Momaya, they are doing a wonderful job in terms of guiding people how they can become an independent director. So that really helped me to get through the basic hygiene checks which the Indian government wants. After that, it's like an opportunity knocks at your door when your stars are shining. So I just appeared for the interaction with the MD and it worked out.
Okay, okay, great. As I was reading a couple of days ago, as per the Companies Act, IDs can have subsequent only 5 + 5 years of tenure. So there are supposedly going to be 1,500 positions of IDs, maybe after March 2024. And apart from that, lot of companies are going for IPOs. And last, I would say 6 months, there have been so many number of IPOs. So of course, what is your perspective as far as maybe let's say younger crowd, maybe let's say people having around 20 years of experience or so, taking up this position, what kind of challenges they could face, what kind of maybe strategies they could utilize in order to maybe let's say get ID position and bring in fresh perspective into the board. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would just suggest that don't just jump for any position that comes your way thinking that you are able to get an ID position. You should do a very thorough check behind what the company is about. You should have a very clear and transparent talk with the promoters about what is their philosophy and whether it resonates with your ethics. So be it compliance issue, and as you are aware, ID being an ID is a very, not only a responsible task but also a very risky proposition. So for youngsters, I would say it's not like a corporate job or any teaching job where you have a security blanket over you. It's a place where your abilities are exposed in various ways. So you should definitely do a thorough check about the company. You should ask all possible questions to the promoters about compliance. In fact, I remember I even had words with the CA and the CS of the company to know what the company is about, because you just can't put yourself at risk, and because you have a brand value from your past, and you can't put your goodwill at risk just for getting an ID position in any company. So it's very essential that you go with promoters whose philosophy resonates with your ethics, and because you just can't compromise on that.
Okay, okay, great. Maybe adding to that question, what ID is not? As you mentioned earlier, the bit of it you touched that it is not necessarily so-called glamorous position that you have a director besides your name. It is also a lot of responsibility. So what are a couple of things which you could say that it is and what it is not? Maybe if you could just summarize a bit, a couple of points.
Yeah, so I would say three things. I'll first cover what being an ID is not. First of all, you are not the management, in the sense, as an ID you are not involved in the day to day management of the company. Your role is basically is like of an oversight person, but you are not involved in daily execution of operational tasks. So you have to always maintain an arm's length distance from what is happening in the day to day functioning of a company. And because every ID must have worked, most of them must have worked in the job, there's a tendency to intrude in the day to day functioning. But everyone once must know that you must maintain an arm's length distance from the day to day working of the company, because that is not where your expertise lies, or that is not where your role is. Secondly, you are not the employee of a company. You are again an external individual. You do not have an employer employee relationship with the company. So it's a different relationship for which you have to train yourself, because your voice may not be uh, heard the way an employee's voice is heard. And most important point which I feel is, you are not a rubber stamp for the management. So independent directors are not meant to simply approve the decisions made by the top management. You have to critically evaluate proposals and really ask challenging questions, and you have to literally see through the skin of what others are doing, so that you ensure that the company is running in the best interest of the stakeholder and uh, basically all the stakeholders. So you are definitely not the rubber stamp of the management. You are an entity which is giving an overall view of the situation. So I would sum up by saying that ID, according to me, is not uh, a management which is involved in day to day functioning. You are not the employee of the company, and definitely you are not acting as a rubber stamp for the management. You have to evaluate proposals critically, and you have to ask challenging questions in the board meeting to ensure the interest of the stakeholder is always met. Coming to your second question, what an ID is, I don't have a very long experience of being an ID. I'm still fresh. But what I would say is two things which definitely matter. First is taking care of the interest of all stakeholders. And that is the most challenging part, because what matters to one stakeholder will not matter to the other. So in every decision you make, you have to strike a balance. So for example, a policy which may be in favor of employees may not be favor in favor of the management, or a policy which is in favor of shareholders may not be in favor of any other stakeholder. So it's a challenge to strike a balance to ensure that every stakeholder's interest is represented, because you are really responsible for ensuring that the company's strategies and decisions align with the long term value creation for its stakeholders. Second, I would say is that you have to give an objective oversight. So like, even in academics, on corporate, you give a perspective which is yours, but as ID you have to really give a perspective which is unbiased and external. So I have seen when information comes, maybe I have to research on it from a lens that is not that of an insider person, but you have to really give an overview which is from an external world. So that is something which is challenging. And unfortunately, in our education system, unless you do some training programs at institutes like IIM Bangalore offers one, we are not trained to do so.
Okay. Okay, great. So you also, during the course of our conversation, you also mentioned about some kind of mentoring or guidance by an individual as an institution. So what is the role of, let's say, fresh IDs going into organization of mentorship, getting mentorship for senior professionals? How useful it is? What is its utility? If you could just tell from your experience.
um, Actually, it depends from individual to individual. I definitely took help from Mentor My Board, and I'm a lifetime member at IOD. So networking helps, but ultimately it's your journey. I would not say that anybody really helped me. Networking is there, but as it happens in reality, networking is there, but you have to charter your own path.
Sure. Okay, great. Now coming to another very important topic, even though Companies Act mandates it about diversity on board and of course representation of women on the company's board. What's your perspective about how this diversity in the board helps in decision making? And If you could just talk about something from maybe what you would have observed somewhere.
Yeah, I think diversity is definitely good. As a researcher, I will not give you a list of studies which show it. But yes, there are studies which show that financial performance of companies, not only in India but also abroad, has been enhanced with presence of women on the board. Apart from the legal and the regulatory compliance, I feel I have observed that women on board, and I have interacted with others also. Females are definitely more prepared for the board meetings than others. I'm not pinpointing on any particular person, but generally females come more prepared for the board meetings than their counterparts. They offer a different perspective, and I think most important is that they reflect the viewpoint of the customer base. So you would agree with me that in any company the customer base is defined by both men and women. So even if it's a watchmaking company, men will go with features and women will go with the style of the dial. Or I was talking to a real estate agent for drafting a course for academia, and he said that, ma'am, you cannot teach this in the class, because when the house has to be purchased, the money may lie in the pocket of the male of the house, but the decision has to be that of the lady, and you cannot teach a real estate broker how to strike that conversation. So getting a woman on board definitely helps you get a wider perspective and reflect on the customer base that you have. So I think in that ways, mm, it is very important, and I am in support of Indian government's decision for having more women on board.
So very beautifully put it. Of course, the due representation of the, I would say, the other half. Of course, as far as the representation in Parliament is concerned, even though the bill was passed, it is yet to be implemented. But of course, that would give, I would say, much more richer set of discussions. And of course, various perspectives, let's say whether it is related to inflation, whether it is related to other aspects which some way impact the day-to-day economy, day-to-day lives of individuals. I think those decisions would be probably more well thought out. Thank you for sharing all that. Now, coming to, we are almost end of January. Of course, the budget would be going to be presented. So, any thoughts around maybe, let's say that what, in terms of maybe either the startup ecosystem, the industry per se, what are a couple of things which the government should do? Because anyway, some of the aspects you would be covering in your classes, in your economics classes. So, maybe a couple of things you could talk about.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for getting this perspective in this interview. So, I'm also working as a senior visiting fellow at Pehle India Foundation, which is a think tank run by Dr. Rajiv Kumar, who was ex VC of Niti and my ex boss. So, I work closely with him, and last year we even presented our views to the finance minister for economic budget, union budget 2023. So I'll just share a few things which have shaped my thinking by being on Pehle India's team. First of all, I work with Bharat at 100, which is the flagship program of Pehle India and the government, to see how Bharat should look at 100 years of independence. So I think we need to set up a task force to identify sectors with forward and backward linkages. So, for example, when a residential society is developed, there are around 200 sectors which benefit from it. So we need to evolve our way of thinking from just saying that this sector needs funding through a budget. We need to identify sectors which have more backward and forward linkages. Other than that, as you asked, in the area of entrepreneurship, at Pehle India, we have been doing a lot of research on it, and we feel that India is an economy where entrepreneurship or the business is in the DNA of Indians. You will not find any other economy where business has grown so much over the past centuries and even in the ancient era. So Indians really have the DNA of entrepreneurship in their blood. So, going with that, we have realized that, like every district has employment exchange, the government must ensure that at district level we should have centers for entrepreneurship. Then, coming to academia, because I am a teacher, I personally feel with the advent of AI and ChatGPT, we need to really revamp the way the entire education ecosystem is defined. We just can't say that invest in education, but with chat gpt coming in, maybe we have to think of how new schools should be built, what should be the design of classrooms, what kind of equipments we need in a classroom. Because even in my classes I have to tell students that, you use chat gpt to answer my questions, and I really don't know, despite being a teacher for more than a decade, that how will this happen going in future. So we really need to invest in the education sector in a modern way than what has been happening so far. And also, I recently attended an event at Bharat Mandapam on 1st of January, and a journalist made a very nice statement about education, that in education we need to have sanskar kranti, that we need to pass on the values to our future generations if India has to move forward versus other countries. And I think the government should pay attention to it. And lastly, as you know, India is a manufacturing hub. So there's a very nice book that has been written by CMA Pankaj Jain, which talks about how MSMEs should transform into MNCs. And I think the idea of transforming MSMEs to MNC is something that needs to be carried forward, because MSMEs form the backbone of our economy. And if we can convert a lot of our MSMEs into MNCs, it will really help the Indian economy as a whole.
Agreed. I quite agree. So even a lot of employment is generated by MSME sector, and of course, a lot of even I've been seeing the SME route of going into the IPO. A lot of organizations have been going, and they have been getting very good valuation. So quite agree. If even more focus attention is done on that sector, there is huge opportunity to generate employment. And given even though we have a very positive demographic dividend, unless and until meaningfully engaging opportunities are not generated, that can be going to be a big problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so you also, yeah, so you also talked about school, and I have been, as I was mentioning also prior to our this formal interaction, it's something which is really good. So if you could just talk about your involvement with the school through JSPS, where you also were trustee, how this school has been, and then what are various kind of things which education sector per se requires in order to maybe for in view of AI and maybe changing a landscape of the education, students could be made more and more future ready.
Yeah. So thanks for posing this. Some part of my life is really very devoted to this. I am the member of the managing committee of GSPS, which is Jain Shiksha Pracharak Society, which is a trust running for the past 125 years. So you can imagine 125 years back, when getting education for boys was difficult, the Jain founder created a separate school for girls at that time. 125 years back, there was a full-fledged school running only for 1,000 girls at that time, because they could foresee that education is going to transform in the coming years. So currently in our schools, we have two schools, Hiralal Jain School and Lakshmi Devi Jain Schools. One is a boys' school and another is a girls' school. We have around 2,000 underprivileged children who who study in our school, and 1,000 boys study in boys' school and 1,000 girls study in girls' school. And we are very happy to say that our students represent Uh, themselves at various forums in national and international events. So even government events, even in the Republic Day parade, till last year, I think the band of Hira Lal Jain School used to be the first one. So we really take pride on the legacy that the Jain Trust has built over the past 125 years. How I function is, I remember in IMA, the biggest learning I took was from Professor Maheshwari's class, where he said that your life is like a table with four legs. You need to have a balance in terms of career, personal life, spirituality, and hobby. And I think for me, just working for these underprivileged kids helps me coming closer to God. So during student days I could meditate, but now when I have to work, I just devote my time working for these underprivileged kids, and that really gives me a kick. uh, because they have so much vibrancy, and even if you can make a mark in the life of few students and make them maybe a Zomato rider, he will not become a sabji wala. Or maybe if our girls can become a trainer in urban company, I think it's a great sense of upliftment for a person to earn a stable income instead of just running from pillar to post as a domestic help. So we try for it, but let's be honest, it's a big challenge because it doesn't happen so easily. Even if we have all the support, there are government schemes which are running, but it is a challenge which I haven't been able to crack. It is very easy to give strategy sitting on boardrooms, but it is very difficult to get these 2000 students coming to school daily and studying daily, getting a midday meal prepared for them. It is a task which requires an overhauling on behalf of everybody who's working for the school. And with regard to the question that you pose, what can be done, something that we are trying to implement. There's a professor at IMA who has started this project called Bird Project, which is a very simple and nice project. We are trying to implement it in our schools as well. So, like, when we watch Netflix documentaries or movies, there are subtitles. So, the professor has created videos for all classes where you can learn Hindi and English language by just reading the subtitles. So if you go to his channel, so it's a very easy and fun way of learning. So what we are trying is, we don't have like smart classroom like a private school, but we have one smart classroom per school. We have a good infrastructure. So let's see how we utilize it. But thanks to the IMA professor who has created this wonderful initiative, and I'm sure it will help a lot of underprivileged kids across India, because it's a very simple and effective way of learning both Hindi and English and Marathi or whatever language you want to communicate in. So that is what we are trying to implement. Let's see how we proceed.
So wonderful. Even though a lot of initiatives are taken, of course, people who have their heart at right places make it happen, and yours is at right place. So my best wishes. Of course, you will be able to do a lot of things. And of course, advent of AI, I would say that in a way also would facilitate this. I've been watching a lot of even Microsoft. They have also been advertising a lot that how even in vernacular languages, all these AI tools can be of benefit. So thank you, Dr. Palak, for being with us. So we are almost at the end of it. So thank you very much for taking out time out of your busy schedule of involving multiple activities. And I hope those who attended live and those who will be watching subsequently will benefit quite a bit from this interaction. Uh,
Thank you so much,
so uh,
Siddharth, for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
thank, thank you,
Thank
thank you.
you.